For years, I carried the belief that I was a good husband, the type who gave trust freely, who didn't feel the need to pry or question every step his wife took. Jealousy never struck me as love, and drama wasn't something I invited into my marriage. To me, love meant trust, and I believed that was enough. Vanessa, my wife, wasn't a bad person. In many ways, she was radiant, charming, lively, and magnetic, but she had a tendency I ignored far too long. She liked to test boundaries, to push just enough to see how much I would tolerate before I pushed back. Sometimes it was little things, spending money we didn't need to spend, staying out later than she promised. I brushed those off as harmless, not worth stirring conflict over. But other times, I noticed something else in her eyes, a quiet challenge, as if she were daring me to finally say no, to see if I would ever draw a line. And then there was Jake. I knew his kind before I ever met him. Vanessa called him a friend, but he was no ordinary friend. He was her ex. And no matter how much time passes, men like Jake don't just linger without reason. They hang around, waiting patiently in the background, wearing the disguise of a harmless companion while biding their time. I warned her about him more than once, not because I was jealous, but because I knew exactly what he was. Each time, Vanessa brushed me off with the same words. "You're overthinking. He's just a friend, Richard. Stop being so insecure. He's like a brother to me." All the classic excuses, all the familiar reassurances. I wanted to believe her, so I let it slide, again and again. But trust has its limits, and eventually she would learn where mine ended. One quiet evening, we sat in the living room, the television humming faintly in the background. She scrolled through her phone, casually talking about her day, when she dropped it into conversation, as if it were nothing. Some of my old friends are planning a weekend trip, a beach house in the Bahamas, just relaxing, catching up, reliving old times. On the surface, it sounded harmless. I'd never tried to control where she went or who she spent time with. Independence had always been part of our marriage. We each had space to live our own lives. But then she added a name that made my stomach tighten. "Jake's going too." The way she said it wasn't accidental. She paused just slightly, watching for my reaction, waiting to see if I'd object. She wanted me to protest, to forbid her from going, to play the controlling husband she could push back against. I'd warned her about Jake for years, not out of paranoia, but because I saw him for who he was. And she knew it. But instead of snapping or pleading, I did something she didn't expect. I stayed calm, my voice steady, my face unreadable. I told her, "If you go, don't bother coming back." She blinked at me in surprise, then laughed, rolling her eyes. "God, Richard, you're so dramatic." She smirked, falling back on the usual defenses. "You're overreacting. Jake's just a friend. Stop being insecure." But this time I didn't fight. I didn't argue. I simply said, "Do what you want." And I meant it. She thought I was bluffing, just as she always had. She didn't realize this time was different. The morning of her trip, she packed as though nothing had changed. She moved around the house humming, folding clothes into her suitcase, paused and check her phone, probably answering messages from the group chat. Every now and then she glanced at me, expecting a repeat of my warning. I said nothing. When she was finished, she rolled her suitcase to the front door, leaned down, and kissed my cheek the way she always did before leaving. "Love you," she said lightly, dismissively, as if my words 2 days earlier had never been spoken. Then she grabbed her keys and left without hesitation. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I just watched from the window as she slid her suitcase into the taxi, climbed inside, and disappeared down the street. The moment she was gone, I picked up my phone. It was time to begin. The day before, I had already arranged the first step. A locksmith arrived within the hour, and soon the house was resecured. The keys Vanessa carried in her purse were now useless. When she returned, expecting everything as she had left it, she'd be greeted instead by a locked door and a life she was no longer welcome in. Then I turned to her belongings. Our bedroom, her side of the closet, the vanity lined with perfumes, drawers filled with folded clothes. Piece by piece, I packed everything. Her dresses, shoes, makeup, every trace of her carefully boxed and labeled, ready to be sent to her parents' home. She would have no reason to step foot in this house again, not even for a forgotten sweater. The final step was the papers. I dialed my lawyer. I'm ready, I told him. Make it official. There was no hesitation, no second guessing, no regret. This wasn't an empty threat. Vanessa had spent years believing she could test me endlessly, cross lines without consequence, and I would always cave. She thought she knew me, that I'd grumble, give her the cold shoulder, and eventually forgive. But not this time. This time I was finished. The rest of the day, I moved through the house with quiet determination. The space we once shared no longer felt heavy with doubt. It felt lighter, freer. Years of mistrust, of ignored instincts, finally lifted. And by the time I went to bed that night, I knew there was no turning back.